All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for everybody who's joined the Perfect Storm. I'm, pretty excited to present this tonight. This is a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of effort has gone into training for this, and I'm going to share some information tonight that's going to be some new information that's going to really kind of put things into a perspective, hopefully, for a lot of people. I want to preface the talk tonight by saying that what we're going to do is we're going to present a lot of information, we're going to present a lot of science, a lot of neurology, and a lot of new research, and kind of connect the dots for you guys. And once again, kind of take a look at what's going on with ADD, ADHD, autism, sensory processing, other issues, and maybe get people to look at it into a new light. So thank you again for taking some time to watch this. I will say that we are going to, I'm going to just kind of get through the material. And there's a little chat box if you guys want to type in questions as we go. And I'm going to wait till the very end to answer questions. So if you guys have any questions, type in the chat box. We'll get to it at the end. So those who need to jet out can. But I'm also recording this. So if you don't get to watch it tonight, I will share it with everybody tomorrow. So let's go ahead and get started. A little bit about me personally. My first and foremost, I'm a husband and a dad. That's kind of my major title that I'm really proud of. I've got 2 little boys. I'll talk about them here in a minute. But that's my biggest thing about me. I did my undergrad at Ohio State, so I'm an alum of the Ohio State University. And after Ohio State, I went to Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa, where I graduated in 2006. So crazy to think, but it's almost been 10 years since I graduated from chiropractic school. So where's time go? I came back to Columbus, Ohio after I graduated, was working in Columbus for a while, spent about 7 years in Delaware, where I moved back to Central Ohio, Gahanna, New Albany area. We live in Gahanna, practicing like the Gahanna, New Albany, Westerville area. I was lucky enough to earn Chiropractor of the Year for the Central Ohio Chiropractic Association in 2014. And in 2015, I was named the Ohio State Chiropractic Association's District Director of the Year. I really am passionate about what I do. And so I do spend a lot of my time trying to raise awareness about chiropractic and chiropractic things. Work a lot with the State Chiropractic Association. And I'm on their board currently, and I'm also the chair of the Ohio Public Health Association. Really awesome organization. They are one of 2 public health associations across the country, us in Oregon, that have a chiropractic section. So I'm lucky enough to chair that and do a lot of work with them. And owner of Proactive Health and Wellness since March of 2015. It's been an awesome experience being at Proactive Health and Wellness. And once again, it just gives me a kind of a launching point to kind of spend more time working on my passion. Why am I doing this tonight? Why is a chiropractor talking about ADD, ADHD, sensory issues, kids' health? And once again, my passion really boils down to my 2 kids of my own. So you see here, Hudson is the older one, and Owen's my youngest one. I read a research article not too long ago that my children's generation are likely to be the first generation of kids not expected to outlive their parents. And I'm not okay with that. So that's what started a lot of it. That's what continues to drive me, these 2 guys right here. And it's a passion behind what I do. You might even hear them running around upstairs. So if you hear feet running around a lot, that's them right there. So this is what we know. What happens to people who stay in the middle of the road? They get run over. Things have to change. We are in the middle of an epidemic. ADD, ADHD, autism, all these neurodevelopmental issues are getting worse and worse, and nobody has a great answer as to why. We have to do something different because what we're doing is not working. We need to change. We need to get a better path. Why do we want to stay on this road? We look at ear infections. 95% of kids have at least 1 ear infection by the age of 3. That is amazing. That's It's a crazy, crazy statistic. Asthma, 1 in every 10 kids are diagnosed with asthma. ADHD, 1 in 9 kids, 1 in 12 boys. And autism, 1 in 68 kids, 1 in 32 boys. And that number is rising pretty drastically, pretty quickly. So we have to change. We have to do something different, because what we're doing just isn't doing the trick. So we're going to start with this first video. It's called the moonwalking bear. So it's easy to miss something you're not looking for. We're going to come back to the moonwalking bear, but what is happening is right in front of our eyes that people kind of inherently know something might be wrong, but don't really know where to look, and really, what are we missing? So the plan tonight, once again, the first thing we want to do is just gain better awareness, give you an awareness of what's happening. Get some answers. Get some answers as to why. Why is a big question that I think not enough people ask. And 3, we want to give you some action steps. We want to give you some ideas on what we need to do to make a difference with your kids. So we're going to start with 2 rules. When I was a child, when we were in school, there were 2 major rules. And the first rule was, 1, don't call kids names. It seems like today every kid has a name, whether it's autism, ADD, sensory, some kind of developmental issue not else specified, NLS, Asperger's, oppositional defiance, OCD, anxiety, bipolar, allergies, asthma. We give kids these names, give these kids these labels, and they seem to really identify that. The other rule that we had when we were a kid is 2, don't do drugs. And of course, now with every name, there's a drug that goes along with the name. And tonight's not about an anti-drug message. There's a time and a place for everything, right? But when we are, that is our first line of defense. It's really, once again, we have to get out of the road. We have to change something that we're doing, because what we're doing is just not working. So what is the perfect storm? The perfect storm is ultimately summed up into your body's ability to adapt to the stress and stress in our environment. And stress comes in 3 forms: physical stress, emotional stress, and biochemical stress. And so when we look at the stresses kids have nowadays, it's just pretty crazy. And it really starts before kids are even born. You can have in utero constraint, the baby, if it can't move, if it's position breech, if there's some kind of constraint there, that is where the initial trauma could start. The big one we're going to talk about here in a little bit is birth trauma, whether it's forceps, vacuum delivery, cord wrapped around child's neck, or C-section, especially emergency C-section. We don't necessarily, if you're a mom that's had a C-section, the curtain's there, your dad behind the curtain, your mom behind the curtain, you don't really see what happens with these kids, but we're going to show you here in a little bit. But trauma, birth, even a normal birth is very, very stressful. You add these kind of things into it. Once again, not saying that that we should stop doing these things. There's a time and place for them, but we also have to know what happens during them. Childhood falls, once again, you probably hear my boys up running around, banging around, falling around. They fall every day. How many times do we fall when we're learning how to walk? So that's a big thing too, causing some kind of physical stress to our body. It is another stress we have to put up with. The back to sleep program, once again, I could take some pictures on my phone if I could bring it up here, looking at the way these kids sleep. My kids sleep, they sleep all over the place. And even just that, staying in one position for 6, 7, 8 hours at a time is a trauma to some degree. And then car seats, baby Bjorn, bouncy seats. You know, it's easy when the kids are starting to move around, starting to crawl, to just stick them in a bouncy seat so you can go do something. You know they're going to be in the exact same spot when you get back. But you know, there's a process when the kids start to crawl, they start to get the curves in their spine. And when we have them in a bouncy seat and they have them in a car seat for a long period of time, it can affect that normal developmental process. And then we look at chemical stresses. Chemical stresses start with preservatives and pesticides, processed foods. Those are the big ones. You know, 100 years ago, when my grandparents, they had their own farm. They grew their own food. Everything that they ate came out of their garden. Now we have foods from a store that are designed to sit on shelves without going bad. So, you know, what is that doing to, what are those chemicals that are in the processed foods? What are they doing to our body? It's just another stress that our body has to deal with and has to adapt to. Sugar, grains, dairy-based diets, a lot of them cause chronic inflammation with a lot of people, which can lead to other issues. And environmental chemicals anywhere. Talk about household cleaners, detergents. Once again, another chemical stress that our body has to adapt to and has to deal with. Vaccines, antibiotics, other drugs. This is once again not an anti-vaccine talk, but when we talk about what vaccines are designed to do, vaccines are designed to create a stress on your immune system so your immune system can learn whatever virus it's trying to fight off. And so when it comes into contact with that on a day-to-day basis, it can fight that off. But when we look at the amount of vaccines that we've had from when I was a child to our children now, I think my boys now, from the time they're born to the time they are 18, they have 68 to 69 different vaccines. Once again, I'm not pro or con here, but we just have to recognize that there's definitely an increased stress on our immune system because of those than when I was a child. So once again, just another stress that our bodies and our nervous system, these kids, have to adapt to. And then mental, emotional stress and thoughts. And this is probably the biggest out of all three of them. We start out with a stressful, fear-based pregnancy. It starts from day one. How fast is your heartbeat? We're doing ultrasounds every couple months. Is your baby too big? Is it not big enough? Are you eating enough protein? How's your sugars? Like, everything is very fear-based and very stressful for parents. Once again, I've been through two with my wife, and it can be very, very stressful. Stressful forced emergency deliveries. Once again, there's a time and a place for everything. Sometimes they're absolutely necessary. My youngest son, Owen, my wife had to spend 3 weeks in the hospital on bed rest, and then Owen was born 5 weeks early. I think I didn't stay in the NICU or anything like that, but it's a very, very stressful situation, and not only stressful for parents, but stressful for these kids too. And then NICU stays, once again, thank God we didn't have to stay there. Thank God for the wonderful people who work in the NICU. They do some amazing things to help save these babies' lives. This is, once again, very, very emotionally stressful on both parents and on the child. Fast-paced, high-stress life, I'm guilty with that. Go, go, go. My oldest son is 5. We're already doing T-ball. We're doing swim lessons. We're doing getting ready to start preschool. It's run, 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 run. And my 2-year-old hasn't even started anything yet. So it's just, that's kind of the way that we go. We're always doing something. There's always some kind of stress. And then once again, we get labeled, we get diagnosed with certain things, certain conditions. We seem to identify with those, and it's once again just another stress, another thing that this is who we are, who we identify with, and it causes extra emotional stress on our bodies. And then bullying. This is something, I mean, when I was a kid, we had to worry about the bullies taking our lunch money, and that was kind of the end of it. We came home, we got to go back to the nest, and everybody was fine, and that was gone. And now these kids nowadays with social media and what's going on there, like they never get a chance to actually leave, and it's 10, 20 times worse than when I was a kid. So once again, all these additional stresses on these kids. And so the new normal, once again, we have fear-based pregnancy, with birth intervention, C-section, forceps delivery, what have you. Then all of a sudden the baby's colicky, isn't sleeping very well, it's crying a lot, it's having trouble latching on, difficulty nursing, which leads to ear infections. With a couple round of antibiotics to clear out the ear infections, 3 to 4 times the number of vaccines when I was a kid, and toxic environment, toxic food. And then on top of that, we have TV, video games, iPads, 24/7 on demand, always there in front of our faces. This is what's normal for these kids growing up. And so this is kind of the root. All these stresses are the root of the perfect storm. And because of that new normal, the right side is a new normal of the things that we're seeing and the things that we're dealing with. So why is a chiropractor talking about these things? What does a chiropractic have to do with ADD, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, autism? Chiropractic is more than just neck pain and back pain. We help a lot of people with neck pain and back pain, absolutely. But ultimately, chiropractic is focused on optimizing the nervous system. And the function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment, see what's going around, and coordinate the behavior of all other cells. So we talk about sensory processing, perceiving environment and coordination, coordinating with the environment, coordinating your body are big, big problems. It's a nervous system problem, perception and coordination. And that's really what we want to do. We want to optimize the nervous system to perceive what the body is doing and be able to coordinate and adapt to its environment. And the chiropractic adjustment does that. We're going to dive a little bit more into that here in a minute. So how it works, here we have the autonomic nervous system. We're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system a little bit more, but the nervous system controls and coordinates all organs, glands, tissues in our body. And the autonomic nervous system is broken down into two branches, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. What we refer to as sympathetic, the fight or flight or gas pedal side of your nervous system, speeds things up. And then the parasympathetic nervous system, the brake pedal, which is kind of our natural way to slow everything down, rest, relax, and into that growth and development mode. So the nervous system, the brain controls and coordinates all things. It does so through the spinal cord, through the peripheral nerves. And if there's some kind of miscommunication there, interruption in that pattern, it can affect the health of whatever those nerves control. And so the recipe and the results, we talked a little bit more about the subluxation, kind of digging into the neurology and what's happening. We have this physical stress, we have this chemical stress, we have this emotional stress. And if our body cannot adapt and adapt to those stresses, the results are dyskinesia, disafferentation, dysautonomia, dyskinesis, disconnection ultimately. The inability to adapt to these stresses is ultimately what is causing a lot of these problems. So we're going to start with dyskinesia. Dyskinesia, very simply, is when things aren't moving like they should. Subluxation occurs when a joint, specifically in the spine, becomes misaligned and fixated, losing its ability to go through proper range of motion. Basically, you kind of break it down in simple terms: crooked, kinked, bent, jammed, stuck, things aren't moving. When we talk about kids, we see a lot of sort of torticollis is a good thing. When the kid can't move their neck, when the neck is stuck. You see kids now wearing these helmets. Like, what's up with that? Basically, what that is the child is not able to turn their head. They lay on one spot in their head goes flat. So this is kind of helping to prevent the head going flat. That's a good indication that there's something stuck, there's something fixated, there's something not moving quite like it should, and you have some degree of subluxation there. But basically, dyskinesia is abnormal movement patterns within the spine. You have it in other places too, but mainly within the spine. So we're going to go, before I go to the next slide, I want to once again kind of preface this next slide. This next slide is what ultimately opened my eyes to all this. I've learned this from the National Wellness Foundation. You see kind of down there in the lower left-hand corner. The National Wellness Foundation is a national organization, a nonprofit organization. It's really an amazing organization that's kind of bringing light to this problem. And I've done a lot of training. I spent a lot of time, money training with this organization to learn this. And when I saw this next video, a video of an actual C-section, it was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what's happening. And so we're going to show a video of a C-section. And I want to kind of preface this that if you kind of get your stomach can get uneasy, you might want to close your eyes for a minute. But if you can watch this, because I think this makes a point on where this is actually all starting. So that's like a vacuum attached to the child's head. So that's pretty eye-opening. The American Academy of Pediatrics says normal C-section could put up to 60 pounds of stress on an infant's cervical spine. And if someone tried to do that to my children today, like I'm swinging, right? I'm gonna take somebody out, because that is the only time in our life that is acceptable. And that amount of stress, that amount of stress is just a good way to say it, is that amount of stress on the cervical spine is what can cause that dysfunction. Now, after a child's born, they check eyes, ears, nose, throat, heart, lung, you name it. Nobody ever checks their spine to see if everything's working like it should. So this kind of brings light to what's going on. And when we look at the C-section rates, once again, the CDC says that the C-section rates in our country should be on average 10 to 11%. That's a normal. Once again, C-section in and of itself is not a bad thing. If you are a parent who has had a C-section, please don't feel guilty like you did this to your children. Like there's a time and a place for it, and it's a life-saving procedure for both mom and for children. But we're doing it higher than what's recommended. You look back at 1980, the C-section rate was about 17%, which is still high. But over the next 30 years, we've gone from 17% up to 33%. Actually, this morning, when we look at 6:47 a.m. this morning, this is right off the CDC's website, what is the percentage of cesarean deliveries? We're at 32%. So 2.7 million vaginal deliveries, 1.272 million cesarean. So 1/3 of all deliveries in our country are what we just saw. This is a cool study. It said birth injury intervention, autism, asthma. So this basically says what kind of factors are there that's causing autism. And it says here in the research that the etiology of autism is unknown. It is now believed that the mechanism underlying autism etiology is most likely polygenetic, which potentially epistatic and environmental factors may interact with genetic factors to increase the risk. What does that mean? Basically to say that when we look at genes and genetics take a long time to shift, a long time to change. And with the meteoric rise in autism, it's faster than what a genetic shift would be. This is saying that there's likely some other factors that are playing a role in autism. There's something environmental, something in our environment, and maybe even probably likely more than one thing that's also factoring into this autism problem. And so we can't look at just genes as a genetic factor. It has to be something else too. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of epigenetics. Epigenetics is a newer field of study. And epigenetics basically says that genes can be activated and deactivated based on environment. And so this is from a Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a PhD. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. But basically what he says is the problem is while there's an understanding that the mechanism isn't working, they're blaming the vehicle for what went wrong. They believe that the vehicle, in this case our bodies, is controlled by genes. And guess what? They don't take into consideration there's actually a driver of the car. The new science, epigenetics, reveals that the vehicles or the genes aren't responsible for the breakdown, it's the driver. So two cars come off the lot, the exact same place, the exact same time, the exact same model. Everything is perfectly the same about the car. Two different drivers. One driver changes the oil every 3,000 miles, is rotating the tires, is doing everything they can to maintain the car, driving very slowly at the speed limits, braking slowly, starting slowly, taking it easy on their car, while the other driver never changes their oil, never rotates their tires, drives as fast as they can, slams on the brakes, turns corners. Which car is going to break down faster, right? the one with the bad driver who doesn't take care of the car. And that's the same thing. Another example I heard to explain epigenetics is a speaker I was listening to said, what if we found out today that all the fish in Lake Erie had cancer? Would we say, what's wrong with the fish's genes? Or would we say, what's wrong with the water? And we have to start thinking about humans as different than what we are. We have to start thinking about humans as animals. And so what factors in our environment are causing these genes to be turned on and causing these things, especially early in life, especially early in development. Here's another research study. This was actually done by a couple of osteopaths and DOs. They looked at the incidence of somatic dysfunction in healthy newborns. So healthy children after they're born, what is going on with their spine? And is there anywhere in their spine where there's misalignment, fixation, decreased range of motion? And they looked at 100 healthy kids, and out of the 100 healthy kids, they found 99 out of 100 had some kind of dysfunction in their spine from the birth process. So once again, this isn't a chiropractic study. This is DOs showing that from a normal, healthy birth for healthy children, even though they have no problem, there is dysfunction in their spine following birth 99% of the time. So dyskinesia, we have this trauma, we have this changes in motion patterns in our spine. When we have this kinesia, that flows into what's called disafferentation. And disafferentation basically tells us that input controls output. So what does that mean? When we look at our senses, we actually have 7 senses. So we know eyes, ears, or hearing, vision, taste, touch, things like that. But there's actually 7. The 2 we don't normally talk about is 1, movement, proprioception and nociception, good and bad. We'll talk about those. We'll hit about those in a minute. And then balance and coordination. And your brain is also in control and in charge of changing and controlling all of these. Here's a great illustration, if I can bring it up, about sensory processing disorder. So that's a good illustration of what sensory processing disorder is, and that's another great illustration on why occupational therapy is actually really good for these kids. Occupational therapy helps pave the roads. But what we do is we try to get rid of the roadblocks, get those working a little bit better. So is there really, do they really need paved roads, or is there a problem with the road? Is there a roadblock? Do we need to open up the roads so those signals can travel down the road like they need to? And that really kind of leads into what proprioception is. So proprioception is basically neurological stimulation from movement. It basically charges the brain's batteries and actually calms it down. Every single joint in our body has nerve receptors, and our spine carries most of them. Over half the neurons in our spinal cord are there for the specific function of interpreting movement, where your body is in space and time, perceiving your environment and coordinating in your environment. 60% of the proprioceptive input comes from the spine, and 1/3 of it comes from the upper part of the neck. So this upper part of the neck is very, very important, and if there is dysfunction there, you do not get that movement, you do not get the proprioception. You have dyskinesia, which leads to that disafferentation. You're not getting the input from the neurology that senses movement. So misalignment, you get the fixation. The stress, this fight or flight is stuck on. This gas pedal, the sympathetic response is on go, and it can't slow down. There's no brake pedal. So once again, subluxation, misalignment. According to the gate theory, if you've never heard the gate theory before, the gate theory basically says that your brain can only interpret the fastest nerves that get back to it. So pain or nociception is a very slow mechanism. It takes a long time for when you have some nociceptive input, when the joints aren't moving, to when it gets to your brain. Proprioception, on the other hand, is very, very fast. When we talk about movement, we talk about balance. It's a very, very fast neurological process. So when things are moving, your body can't interpret the pain, can't interpret the nociception. It's calming to your brain, helps your brain focus. When you have fixation, you have increased nociception, and it's noise, like Metallica. Everything's going crazy and can't focus, which leads us to the next D, which is dysautonomia. Dysautonomia is a state of imbalance or dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system controls all the organs, glands, and blood vessels in our body. It also controls other major systems like our immune system, our digestive system, our endocrine system. We talk about, well, I'll come back to fight or flight and sympathetic and parasympathetic here in a minute, but when there's dysfunction, the brain can coordinate all the other functions in the body. We're constantly stuck in the state of fight or flight. So when we talk about this neurology of stress, like what actually happens when our body's under one of these 3 T's, these physical stress, this emotional stress, this chemical stress, is the stimulus initially is detected by the nervous system. It says that something's wrong. The sympathetic nervous system engages. Your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. It's kind of deep rooted back into where, you know, the caveman wanted to run away from the saber-toothed tiger, right? So when the caveman's busy running away from the saber-toothed tiger, does the caveman need to worry about digesting the hamburger he had for lunch? No. Does he worry about the flu bug that he comes in contact with when he's running away? No. Does he worry about how he's going to grow and develop? No. None of that happens. It's all about running away from the stress, getting away from the stress. So when your nervous system perceives some kind of stress, the sympathetic nervous system engages. It directly affects the function of the organ, the visceral function. The adrenal glands start to produce hormones. Nociception, that dysfunction, reaches the central nervous system, reaches your brain, spinal cord. The amygdala, the stress and anxiety sensor, starts firing. The hippocampus is the learning center. So if this is there long enough, this actually becomes a learn, stuck on, locked in neurologic process that learns that as normal for that person or that child specifically. And it affects the prefrontal cortex, which specifically actually speeds up the frontal cortex, which the prefrontal cortex is in control of cognitive behavior, personality expression, decision-making, and moderating social behavior, which is the cornerstone of, you know, a lot of the problems that these kids have. They don't know where they're at. They don't know how to interact. They can't perceive their environment and know that there's something going on. This goes into like the pituitary axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenal, the endocrine system are all, you have the large hormonal imbalances too. So when we look at how ADD, ADHD, autism, sensory processing, how are they typically treated is with drugs. Do they really have a chemical imbalance? Like, we're treating it with chemicals. The reason we're treating it with chemicals is because they have a chemical problem. Is it really a chemical imbalance, or is there some kind of dysfunction within this whole process that we need to engage and reset that normal function? Once again, the prefrontal cortex is in control of all higher motor functioning. We talk about emotion. We talk about things like that. This was awesome research done last year in 2016. And it says manipulation of dysfunctional spinal joints affects sensor motor integration in the prefrontal cortex. Basically, it's saying, it's looking, what kind of changes we see in the prefrontal cortex. They were looking at the entire brain, but they wanted to focus in on the prefrontal cortex, and they found most of this happened in the prefrontal cortex. But what they did is they did an adjustment, and they measured where things changed. The research concluded that following a chiropractic adjustment, the prefrontal cortex activity decreased by an average of 20.2%, which was a huge, huge finding in the study. Amazing study. They had two groups of people. They gave some people a sham adjustment. They didn't see any changes in the prefrontal cortex. They gave another group an actual adjustment. They measured the findings in the prefrontal cortex function improved by, on average, 20% after the adjustment. So we're talking about a drug-free way of helping these kids with emotional issues, perceiving their environment, and social issues. This is really, really a groundbreaking study. Next one says, what happens in Vegas does not stay in Vegas. The vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is your parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. The parasympathetic nerve is mainly your vagus nerve, which is like your brake pedal nerve. This is really, really important because your parasympathetic nervous system is in control of rest, relaxation, digestion, immune system function, and all growth and development really happens, especially neurologic development in these young kids. All happens on the parasympathetic side of the nervous system when they're resting and relaxing. So the central nervous system, this looked at, basically what this study did is they took, they actually used a vagal stimulator. They stimulated the vagus nerve to see what would happen. And they found that the central nervous system interacts dynamically with the immune system to modulate inflammation. So they actually, the vagus nerve stimulation potentially reduces intestinal inflammation, restoring intestinal homeostasis. So when the vagus nerve is engaged, when it was stimulated, inflammation was reduced in the gut and helps actually improve digestive issues. The chiropractic adjustment, improving that, especially the upper cervical spine, can also stimulate the vagus nerve and help do the same type of thing, actually improve inflammation, improve gut conditions. So the vagus nerve is, like I said, the parasympathetic nerve. It's the brake pedal nerve. It's involved in social, emotional recognition, expression, speech, communication. We see lots of speech delays, apraxia, sensory regulation, kind of processing all the sensory input that we're getting, and calming, relaxing, slowing down respiration and cardiac systems. How many kids we see, once again, 110 kids with asthma, digestive motility, and relaxation, improving digest. I mean, when we talk about kids with ADD, ADHD, and autism, kind of the classic symptoms is you also see gut issues, chronic immune challenges, and other issues like that. And that's all locked within the parasympathetic nervous system and the job of the parasympathetic nervous system. Sleeping too. Sleeping is something that sometimes these kids have trouble with, and I know my kids, when they're not sleeping, they need to be checked to see if they're adjusted, because the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nerve, helps them actually rest, relax, and get into that restful, deep sleep. That's really great for improving and engaging the neurodevelopment. So once again, we go back to Dr. Bruce Lipton. Dr. Lipton said that you cannot be in growth and protection at the same time. You cannot be on the gas pedal. You can't be hitting the gas pedal and the brake. You can't be sympathetic and parasympathetic. So if you have someone locked into this chronic stress state in the nervous system, growth, development does not happen. So we need to stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system and have balance. Like we can't completely get rid of the sympathetic nervous system, right? But the whole, like you saw the chart there, we want balance between the two. When they have stress, we want them to be able to adapt to the stress that they have, but also be able to come back down and relax and be back in that growth mode when it's gone. So you have, going back to that last slide, we have these input equals output. A lot of times we see ADD, ADHD as an output syndrome. They're constantly go, 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 go. But the problem is the input going back to the brain isn't there. Once we can get that input back, it calms the brain down, and we don't have the output symptoms. We have this chronic state of stress for a long period of time, constant fight or flight. Eventually we get what leads to dysponesis. And dysponesis is a reversal physiological state consisting of unnoticed, misdirected neurophysiological reactions to various agents, environmental agents, bodily sensations, emotions, and thoughts, repercussions of these reactions throughout the organism. Basically what it says is errors in energy output in organization. They're high energy, go, 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 can't slow down, can't relax. So when we look at these kids, these neuro kids, they basically break down into three types. The first type is a raging bull, stuck on gas pedal all the time, no brake pedals, go, 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 ADHD, anxiety, OCD, ODD. They cannot seem to slow down. The other type that we see, these neuro kids, are the drunken bull. He's disconnected, disorganized, clumsy, ADD, learning disabilities, dyspraxia, can't coordinate speech as well as what they need to, balance issues, motor issues, falling, things like that. The third type is actually raging drunken bull. So you can actually get both. They can actually be both. They don't have to be just one or just the other. They're allowed to have both, but they all kind of, they lie in a very similar place, and just kind of help us based on who they are, and how they present. Kind of just depends on how long it's going to take them to actually improve and get better. So here's Evan's story. You can kind of see Evan's just disconnected right now. Not talking, not interacting with mom. So Evan is, you can see that he's just disconnected. He's not perceiving his environment. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't coordinate. He can't talk. He's not there. And in the perfect storm, once again, it begins from birth, if not before birth, with a stressful pregnancy. But you have a C-section, you have these NICU stays, you have these stressful first days of life, and it starts with a physical stress and an emotional stress, even a chemical stress, potentially even from day one or before. So Evan's story, and once again, this is from Dr. Tony Ebel. We'll be talking more about him in a little bit. He's going to be doing this talk again in a few weeks, but this was his patient. But Evan's story is he came in, he's an emergency C-section, mostly nonverbal. He could say a couple words, 3 to 5. He couldn't follow directions. There was no eye contact, no perception of his environment and what's going on. Very emotional, very disruptive, not sleeping at all. Once again, stuck in this fight or flight stress response. He was diagnosed with autism in early July, and he actually started care on the day he was diagnosed with autism. Here's Evan after 2 months of chiropractic care. So you can see there, just after 2 months of care, that he's already starting to interact with his parents. He's connected with them. There's a lot of eye contact. You see his words start to explode. He's talking, interacting. He's a different child just after 2 months of care. So one of the things that we use is, you saw the scan earlier with Evan, and here are the rescans. This is technology that we invested in our office as well, because it really just helps us evaluate and helps us reevaluate these kids to see if there's something we can help with. And so with Evan, you see on the left-hand side was his second scan. And his second scan showed mainly right-sided scan findings, which is a really encouraging finding that helps us see that the brain is reconnecting. By the time he got to his third set of scans, the stress in the upper part of the cervical spine is almost completely gone, which is amazing. Once again, we saw that birth trauma with the C-section. When that nerve stress is gone, it allows everything to reconnect, like we saw on the second one. The third one, everything started shifting, and now we're seeing more stress in the lower thoracic, upper lumbar spine. We look at the function of those nerves. Gut and immune system are mainly controlled down that lower thoracic, upper lumbar spine, and now there's some nerve irritation down there. After 2 weeks, Evan started falling asleep and sleeping through the night. He fell asleep in the parking lot, slept from 4 p.m. to 7 a.m. Once again, it's a really encouraging sign when your kids start to sleep again. They begin talking more within days, imitating speech, copying mom and dad, playing with brother and sister, doing funny things to engage the parents. He wanted to make his parents laugh, pooping a ton. Can't tell you how many times I hear people say, I have a bowel movement once a week, twice a week. You need to have some kind of bowel movements to get rid of the toxic buildup in your body. If that's not exiting on a regular basis, then that toxicity builds up within your body. He developed a fever, which a fever is not a bad thing. If it gets to 105, 106, right, there's a time when it's an emergency. But when it's 99, 100, 101, why does our body do that? Our body does that as a natural defense mechanism. So when our body comes in contact with a bacteria or a virus, it raises its temperature to an environment that bacteria or virus cannot live in and kills it off. So a fever in and of itself is a way of our body telling us that the immune system is working, the nervous system and the immune system are working well together to fight off and do what it's supposed to do, which is a really, really awesome finding. After 2 months, Evan was speaking in full sentences, more and more speech, sleeping better, behaving better, potty trained, hardly ever sick, and nearly back on track. So just an awesome, awesome change in a really short period of time. Here's the 10 months. No, this cracks me up. But you can see Evan has completely changed. He's a completely different boy. He's making mom and dad laugh. He's engaging, talking in full sentence, and he knows what he knows. He can perceive his environment, and he knows what he needs to do to make mom laugh, which is just awesome. Completely reconnected. So what are the action steps? You know, the first thing, if you're a parent like I am, is you want to find ways to decrease the 3 T's. How are we going to clean up their diet? How are we going to remove some of the chemical stresses and what they're eating and what they're breathing, what's going on around the house? What can we do to decrease stress emotionally? Get them out in front of the TV, let them play, and find ways where they have these stresses and decrease them. Increase their ability to adapt to their environment, and find out if we can help. Those 2 and 3 really kind of go hand in hand. The best way to find out if we can help is, like I said, the scanning technology you saw with Evan is really, really important to us in evaluating these kids. If we do a scan and we find that there's some kind of nerve stress, then it could be something we can help with. And the scan, the evaluation is really what we pride ourselves on, to help evaluate and reevaluate these kids. So if you're a parent who's watching this, we'd love to give you the opportunity to scan your kid. We'd love the opportunity to check to see if we can help. We're not going to sit here and tell you we help every single kid, right? But this is something that's real. This is something that I actually gave this presentation earlier in the morning. It's like, I've talked to a lot of parents who are reaching for ropes to hold on to, and they've run out of ropes. And all of a sudden, this is another rope that they can grab onto. This is a last hope card. And we take that very, very seriously. We love the opportunity to see if we can help these kids. Do a scan, see if there's something going on that is something as simple as a chiropractic adjustment, something as safe as a chiropractic adjustment can make a big difference in these kids' world. The sooner we can get to them before this is deep-rooted and becomes a memory, the more likely it is we can help change something like this and improve these kids' lives. So thank you. Thank you so much for taking some time to listen in tonight. Please reach out to me. If you have any questions, the best way to reach me is my email. My email is luke@proactiveohio.com. Follow us on our Facebook page. We actually do this talk fairly frequently. This is such a kind of a hot topic right now. Our next Perfect Storm online class will be Thursday, September 17th, 9 p.m., presented by Dr. Tony Ebel. So Dr. Ebel is main doc who has taught me a lot of this information, presented by the National Wellness Foundation. He's probably one of the best pediatric chiropractors in the world. He sees a ton of kids in his office, and once again, he is the creator of the Perfect Storm. And I do a lot of my training with him. So if you know someone who you think they want to, or send out a copy of this, you can watch it again, and you're always welcome to forward this to them. But they like to tune in with Dr. Tony. That's a really good recommendation as well. Please forward that to them. You can sign up online. There's a link on our Facebook page to that as well. And then, like I said, I gave this presentation earlier in the day to another organization. If you have social services group, if you have a mom's group, if you have a school group, if you have a church group, if you know somebody with a group of parents who could benefit from this information, I always enjoy doing the online classes, but there's nothing quite like being face to face with people and doing this class online and actually seeing the heads nod and saying, "Oh my gosh, that hit home. That sounds like my kid." And all of a sudden we give hope to a parent who doesn't have hope. Like, that's one of my favorite things in the world to do. So if you know someone who do this, I do this as a kind of community service. If you know someone else who would like to hear this live, please reach out to me and let me know, and we'll see if we can help. Thank you again for your time. Like I said, we appreciate all your time. We're gonna send this out as a recording. If you have any other questions, reach out to me. But thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.